Okay, welcome back to another scenario. This time we're in WICSO, News Pros WICSO. Go watch that if you haven't. But as if you have watched it, then you should know that there's this ideology popping up over the world called Unitarianism, where basically just countries keep uniting into bigger countries, and then they leave behind their religion and ethnicity supposedly. But there is a pretty popular theory that they might be actually like evil, working against the world really. Maybe trying to like take it over, form a new world order. Honestly, I kind of want it to be true, but I don't really think it is. I feel like Ada's Pro's probably just the way he's talking about things. He's probably not gonna have them be evil, but we're just gonna be looking at what would happen if they were. So, quite obviously, the first thing that we're gonna be seeing happen is more Unitarian expansion, mainly down this African one. A lot of these surrounding countries have, the thought of joining it, so we're going to see that eventually come into reality. So we're just not going to, waste time talking about why, because we all know that just they want to. It is in the newest episode has said that these three countries have all supported the idea of joining in, so I would not be surprised if they do it soon, which makes this very big. I would also maybe expect Madagascar to. I feel like that could be something that happens. With that, we have the African Unitaria becoming massive, one of the strongest countries in the world probably. Definitely top 10, maybe top 5 power. Now, this Canadian Unitaria thing, this one's a little bit more difficult because I doubt Pacifica would want to join it, and obviously the US doesn't. I think Ada said that the US is kind of scared of it, so obviously it would not. One country that might, though, is Iceland, so they're going to go ahead and do it. We're going to leave Europe for last. Over here in Japan, I'm not entirely sure if we would actually see this happen, so we're going to ignore it. But down in Indonesia, I could definitely see this happening with probably the Philippines, this gold country. Oh, I erased Gray Papua. Gray Papua isn't on this map. Well, we're just going to say that it also joins. Not the capital. And then finally, I would actually not be surprised if they get Vietnam to join too. So now this one's pretty big. Japanese one, I think, would just stay as Japan. But looking over at this Iberian one, there's a little yellow team group down here in France, so we're actually going to see that kind of, just going to make it pink. I mean, not yellow team, yellow religion country, so I'm going to make it yellow. So this little thing wants to join the Unitarians, but the French government does not want to. So instead it rebels, and this rebellion is very successful and is being secretly funded by the Iberian Unitarians. After all, they did actually just rise up through a revolution in Galicia. So we actually see this happen. And with that, this entire panhandle of France starts to break off, eventually getting near the capital. By this point, they're pretty satisfied with what they have. They have actually a lot more than just their actual religion, the yellow religion. They have a good amount of, I believe this would be the purple religion. So now they're going to agree with the French government that they can join the Unitarians, also encompassing now some of that purple religion. Poor France just got nerfed. So some countries are now, especially because of this, starting to get very suspicious of the Unitarians. So we're going to see the Anti-Unitarian League be made. Now obviously I forgot to mention this, but there's no other alliances or no other alliances, and the AN does not exist, so none of that will be considered. But we will see alliances forming, and obviously we have the Unitarian Alliance. So the two countries that start this are America, Tanzania, and actually 3 countries, because France is also a founding member. But past that, we do see a few more countries join. Most of these are on the border of Unitaria. Now, interestingly, one of these is Australia, which is obviously a very hard decision to make, because Australia and pretty much everyone else in the world have very bad relations. However, doesn't really make them allies in a sense. They just kind of have this pact against the Unitarians because they think it might be a greater evil. Past that, we also have this country join, as well as this one by Japan. I believe it's one of the last communist countries, if not the last. No, because this one. I think there's only 2 communist countries left. And we also actually see the Dutch, so that's another pretty powerful country. But yeah, so far, it's not really that big of a thing, but it is a thing. Also, we should probably just draw in the Unitarian Alliance real quick. So, you, and you. So, if you remember, over here in the pink team in this area, which used to be its own country, like right here, this was there were some Unitarian rebellions here, but then they got kind of suppressed, and then the original government and the Unitarians, they still have some very terrible issues, and there's a lot of crimes happening here because of that. So we see a terrorist organization pop up, which is actually going to be the Unitarians, but we see two terrorist governments pop up here. There's the Unitarians and the original government. I kind of forget what the color. I think they were like blue. We're just gonna make them this color because this is the Unitarians. But yeah, so these rebellions, it's not really like one geographic area is for one and one is for the other, but there's just a lot of fighting. So soon enough, people just kind of migrate, and soon there's eventually kind of a northern half for the original government and a southern half for this. So the pink team and the orange team are obviously going to go ahead and not want this. The orange team starts focusing in a lot of their troops. The pink team does also, but a little bit slower, even though they're a lot stronger. But the orange team is actually kind of going to get invaded by the green team. And now, this is just because they're very distracted up here. However, the green team is a microstate, so they really don't need that many troops to push them back. Soon enough, they get wiped out. Hooray, green team. However, they now start doing some pretty terrible things to the green team people, and the Unitarians, who have suffered pretty terrible things from these guys, are also going to be even more fueled by that. So we see even more Unitarian uprisings all across this country. Soon enough, it's kind of looking like a lost cause. We also have some in what was formerly like this country area, and even in this country now, we see some pop up. And basically, we now have Central Asian Unitaria start to get very wanted by the people here. The original government up here is fully knocked out by the pink team, but seeing this, they're just kind of going to leave this mess to its own. And soon enough, everything just kind of falls over to the Unitarians, and Central Asian Unitaria is established. So, rest in peace, green team, finally. I mean, I like the green team, but they've been here since episode 1, and for the past, 30 episodes, they've just been this little thing, so, maybe it's time for them to go. But whatever, we have this Central Asian Unitaria now. Make it that. No, that's not Unitarian enough. Sure. So, Unitarians have now established another new stronghold, but that is not going to be the only stronghold. Over here, we actually see these 3 Texan ones are going to also unite into Texan Unitaria. The capital is going to be right there. Do also need to include them in the Square Alliance, so let's go ahead and do that. This country looks terrible, those borders. But yeah, so with that, we see more and more people start to get suspicious of the Unitarians. So we now see some other countries join the anti-Unitarian alliance. First, that's way too big. First of all is the pink team. Next up, we see Mexico. And probably this country. We also might see some more over here. This, what's it called? Western Europe kind of being very scared of Iberia. The Ireland is not. They're I feel like they're probably more aligned with the Unitarians than the rest of these guys. So yeah. But you know who really hates Western Europe now? Germany. At this point, I feel like it's more like Pomerania, maybe, but whatever. Germany is actually going to become Unitarian because, well, that is terrible to look at. Sure. So yeah, whoa. German Unitaria is now a thing. It's less because they want to be Unitarian and more because they just want to, they're scared of this alliance now, even though this alliance is completely unaffiliated with them, but they're kind of stupid. So yeah. Next up, we see that this Unitarian country is going to actually kind of instate some things over here in the Caribbean nations. Well, nation. Basically, it just like sent people here aren't really that into Unitarianism, but a lot of propaganda is going to get spread by these guys very secretly, and so soon enough, these guys are actually going to join them. And so now this Texan Unitaria also has the Caribbean, which looks kind of weird, but not much you can do about that. Pacifica is kind of neutral on this. They don't really like the U.S. in Mexico. They hate Mexico, and probably the U.S. too. They also don't really like the Unitarians, so they're gonna stay neutral. Over here, though, the Unitarians are going to do something, which is their first like real invasion. Basically, they say that they go to the AN and well, not the AN, but they go to just publicly announce that this country over here has been infringing on their waters, and so they should be able to invade them, especially because they're communist and kind of corrupted. So a lot of this is actually going to go kind of unnoticed. Well, I mean, not unnoticed, but like a lot of people are going to side with the Unitarians all across the world. And because we have every Unitarian country supplying Japan, and this country's pretty weak, it falls over pretty quickly. And the Unitarians grab it up. Now, there are definitely some people who are getting more suspicious of the Unitarians. That number is definitely growing, but just slowly. And there are still a lot of people who want the Unitarians to take over everything. Oh, look at this border, this is terrible. But, yeah. So, there still isn't any, like, global rebellions against them. But, over here, between this country and these two, tensions are getting extremely high. Tanzania and this country are pretty terrified of it. So they beg some other countries to join their alliance. So we see that Ethiopia does. However, someone that's not going to be doing that is, if we can get this color, this country. Because now they are going Unitarian too. They just united and the unification went pretty well for them. So the people just want to keep uniting and unite with more of the world. And so the first step to that is going to go Unitarian in their eyes. So yeah. So with that, things are getting pretty tense here, as now the circle team is surrounded on both sides in Africa. And now this is probably where people are most suspicious of the Unitarians, because this does definitely seem like the Unitarians are trying to like get their influence around these guys. There's no real concrete proof yet, but it definitely does seem suspicious. Remember, the Unitarians are also going to be adding this country into their self. So, yeah. This country is going to join the circle team, because they are getting pretty scared. But soon enough, things are going to boil over, and both of these countries are going to line their troops on each other's borders, and eventually there is a shootout. And so, war is declared between these two, and now that activates both of these alliances. So, let's go ahead and make this partially transparent. Yeah. So the war did start down here in these countries. So naturally, this is where the first fighting is going to begin. Pretty quickly, this country, on that layer, pretty quickly, the South African Unitaria, which is extremely powerful, starts moving into this country with ease. They still do a little bit over in Tanzania. But Tanzania is actually launching their own invasion down to the south here, which probably make a smaller brush size. They completely surround, I believe this is Lake Malawi. It might be the other one. It starts with a T. I kind of forget which is which. I think because Malawi is like here. So yeah, this is Lake Malawi, however you pronounce it. They also do make a landing on Madagascar. Tanzania is a pretty strong country, and they are being backed by these two countries. However, they are going up against all of this, so obviously soon enough that's not really going to be going great. This country's government pretty much completely collapses, and with that we see that the Unitarians start moving in here, surrounding Lake Victoria. Up here, there's just a naval blockade by the Gold Team, and these guys, nothing happens. Over in Western Europe, we see that the Unitarians in Germany are pushing in here, as well as from here. Now, Germany is definitely a lot weaker than these guys, so these guys make great progress. They take France's capital pretty quick, and now France is just left up in Brittany. As for these guys, though, the Dutch team manages to push them back, and from there they start ramping up their invasion. Gotten right in here, and they go into this country, I forget what they were called, Danzig, I think. Danzig was recently occupied by Germany, or annexed by Germany, so, and a lot of these people did not consent to being Unitarianized, so there's very little resistance up here, and soon enough Germany just collapses. They're not the greatest war fighters. Over here in North America, you see that the Texan one is mostly focusing on Mexico. They start pushing into the north here, and from the Caribbean make a landing on the Yucatan Peninsula. And yeah, they are getting very close to the capital as they move down the coast as well. But up here, America is doing pretty well against them. Moving into mostly Louisiana, but also taking this panhandle and making a small spearhead towards the capital for now. Up here, there's a lot of fighting. America is mostly focusing in on this Great Lake area around Lake Superior. They also make it up to this lake and just start pushing in general. However, over in this region that was formerly New England, they are getting pushed back. They also get pushed back in Michigan and these islands. I think those are islands. Delmarva is taken, and soon enough they start moving down the coast of Carolina. So both alliances here are pretty much begging Pacifica to join their own alliance, and Pacifica feels very pressured to make a move, which they eventually do, but they are actually going to be joining on the side of the Unitarians. They are definitely more Unitarian allied than American, because, they've had a lot of historical fighting with Mexico and America. And since they did just unite after all, the unification is definitely something that they like. So soon enough, Pacifica is going to join the Unitarians. But with that, as you can see, we now have 3 Unitarian countries that are all bordering each other. So obviously that means that they are going to unite into one big Unitarian thing. Why is that not working? Yes, there we go. So now this new thing, its capital is going to actually, stay over in Quebec, because there's not really time to sort that out when they're actively fighting a war. But we now have this huge North American Unitarian thing. Definitely the biggest country, probably top 10, probably top 5. Probably stronger than South African Unitaria at this point. And with that, this is going to not look too good for America. America was greatly weakened by World War V, and the Pacifica, they were benefiting a lot from being united under Pacifica, so they've gotten actually pretty strong in just a little bit of time. Compared with the Canadian Unitaria, which is also very strong, there's really not much America can do. And they start making a huge invasion over here in the Atlantic region. And they also spearhead over here to encircle some troops. That's a pretty big loss. They then make a counteroffensive over here, and start pushing in. Over in Mexico, they've actually managed to push them back because most of their troops are focusing in on America. They also even make a small counter invasion over here. So yeah, they try to land on Cuba, but that fails. Meanwhile, over here, a lot of these troops are just focusing in on pushing out America, which they eventually succeed in. And we now see that America is getting beat up from all sides. And yeah, the Unitarians are very powerful in North America. There's still a lot of Americans who are like... There's a lot of Americans who want to join the Unitarians because America kind of historically has been aggressive, but after World War V, they kind of turned good in a sense. So a lot of these people are looking for the betterment of human quality, the quality of life, betterment of the quality of life. So they do think that Unitarianism is a pretty good thing. So eventually, because of how little resistance there is, America falls over to the Unitarians. This is a very big loss for the Circle team. And now the North American Unitarians can focus in on Mexico, although Mexico does manage to hold out for a little bit. Nothing is happening in South America, so at least that's one area we don't have to cover. Also, we really won't have to cover this, because the pink team is a lot stronger than this team, especially with the help of this one. And yeah, this country really does not stand much of a chance. And the pink and yellow team will just kind of jointly occupy it, and then start supplying their troops elsewhere. However, the Galician Unitaria at this point is probably stronger than the Dutch team, but compared to all of Western Europe, probably not. However, they did have the distraction up here in Germany, so they managed to take out the rest of France, and then pretty swiftly move into this country. He's very weak. Eastern Rome does not get involved in this war. They're also probably pretty neutral on this. And yeah, so the fighting is mostly halted along this border, but these guys are now just focusing in on focusing their troops down in the southern countries. So yeah, I don't know why this looks so odd. There's like a bunch of random pixels. It's pretty mountainous over here as you get into the Alps, so they don't really push it further. They do make a small, very small invasion into the Dutch team now, just kind of pushing up along the border to create a front line. And very surprisingly, and something that the Unitarians have been anticipating for a long time, that they really wanted to happen, we actually see that Ireland is going to join them now. Ireland is pretty democratic. I think they're the first democratic country, maybe. And, I mean, it's not like the Unitarians are democratic. Obviously, in this timeline, they're evil. But Ireland is willing to join them because they do see this as being for the good of humanity. Kind of brainwashed, maybe. I don't know. So these guys are going to join up with the Unitarians in Iberia. And their capital is going to be up here in Ireland. And with this, we now see it's not looking too great for the Western Europeans. The Dutch team was just making a counteroffensive down here, when all of a sudden they are now getting bombarded from the north, as a ton of naval invasions are made up here. This French region of it is pretty quick to fall. They also managed to just capitulate these guys. And soon enough, the Dutch capital is under threat on both sides. So that's not good for the Unitarians up there. Also, this one could have triggered the war too, because these guys invaded this guy. But because of their excuse, I think the Circle team, who also didn't really care about this country that much, would just let it slide. Down here, not poor Australia, is getting kind of meet up over here. They're completely removed from these islands. However, an invasion of mainland Australia is practically impossible. So while they take all these islands, the war just kind of becomes a big naval bloody mess over here. It's not looking good for anybody, really. But it's really not looking good for the Africans, who are not Unitarian, because they have just been completely pushed out of African Unitaria, and now Tanzania is fighting for its life. Much of the same for this purple one. This team also manages to win the naval war with the gold team. They now make a landing up here, moving over to its capital. And this team also manages, this invasion also manages to succeed now, as the gold team is fighting a two-front war. So these two sides meet up in the north, and move along this coast to take this island, and take the capital as well. From here, the gold team starts getting collapsed in on itself, which is not great for them. So right now, things are looking pretty bleak for the non-Unitarians, especially over here in Mexico, where we see them just kind of, But it's, I don't really, the only, successful region was in Central Asia, but that was kind of obviously going to happen. I mean, it's just stalemated down here. It's not really stalemated, it's just the front lines are moving, because it's just in the Navy. So, well, the world is getting pretty, not really happy, as most people by now have started to really become radicalized. Like, a lot of people either love the Unitarians and think what they're doing is the right thing, or they hate them and and they realize that they are evil. And eventually that's kind of gonna make itself apparent, as in a lot of non-Unitarian countries, Unitarian people who support the Unitarians start getting, genocided. It's not really genocide, I guess, because it's not like a ethnicity, but you know what I mean. So yeah, this is not going to go too well for the Unitarians, who now have a lot more nationality, I guess, and their troops are a lot more willing to fight for their countries. Yeah. So with that, we see that the Dutch team finally falls over and capitulates, as well as Germany being liberated. Over here in Central Asia, still nothing happens, because nothing really can happen. But over here, Square team manages to capture New Zealand, as well as Tasmania, which is fairly close to the capital of Australia. There's even a temporary landing up here, but this is repelled pretty quickly. But over in Australia, they definitely are kind of failing. And now in Africa, these two countries are completely knocked out of the war, with the Africans now completely being won by Unitaria. But with that, we see that really the true colors of the Unitarians are pretty much revealed by this point, because they are doing not great things to the non-Unitarian people who are over here in Tanzania. Poor Tanzania has been through the second genocide now. First was in World War IV when the gold team did their gold team stuff, but now both of them have been conquered by the Unitarians. However, this is now going to send a message to the rest of the world, especially the more nationalistic countries, that the Unitarians are not good. So, over here, South China, who was formerly allies with Indonesia Unitaria, as well as Vietnam, after they had their new government, they're actually going to join against them. So they now make a surprise invasion over here in Vietnam, taking their former capital, as well as making some landings over in the Philippines. We also see that this country up here does the same. It's more just kind of out of greed because they want this land, not really because they hate the Unitarians. I mean, they do, but they aren't really doing this for a moral reason, just to get more land. But they still are fighting against the Unitarians, so they push them out of this area over here. And this also falls. they were pushed out of mainland Asia as well as Sakhalin, and from there it's just a naval war. South America, none of these countries really do anything. This is a very united continent in terms of because they're all in the same military and economic alliance. However, they don't really want to be. They definitely don't want to be Unitarian because a lot of these countries are still very nationalistic. But also, they're kind of they don't really want to get involved in this war because that would be a lot of death. So yeah. One country that will is Central America, though. Guys also just kind of want to get some land out of Mexico, but still is also, deserving the Unitarians because, this timeline they're evil. I'm not saying this is actually going to happen in ages pros WICSO. I'm just saying that this is what would happen if they are evil. So, yeah. These guys take this. But now, you see over here that something very interesting is going to happen. Basically, completely unrelated from this war. Eastern Rome is going to go ahead and march right into the capital of this country, and from there makes a naval invasion down here, connecting these two fronts up, and eventually this country kind of just capitulates. It's pretty weak, and was not expecting this at all. So now, they are fully annexed. This country down here, well, Rome sends them over an ultimatum, basically saying, give us this land, or we'll meet you up like we did with this country, as well as Corsica. There's still old Rome here. And this country is pretty frightened, so they're just going to have to go ahead and say yes. So now, with Eastern Rome controlling all of this land, I'm assuming you can see what's going to happen. These guys reinstate Rome, and now put their capital back to actual Rome. And with that, if I could get this right, they're going to be joining the anti-Unitarians. I just realized the Unitarians are square ones. I've been making these guys square. Oops. Let's just fix that real quick then. One for you, and also Central America. Bring it over. So we now have Rome joining up with the anti-Unitarians. And with that, it's going to send a message to another country, a pretty old country that was once an empire. So I guess you could call it an old empire. Basically, over here, the red and blue team have been working behind the scenes for a while to try and work around a way to bring back the old empire. But, whoa, by this point, they really don't have to do that, because the world is just in complete chaos right now. So they go ahead and just reunite into the old empire. They are also joined by the pink team, and this one up here, and even these guys. This is even stronger, and probably Caucasia too. So this is even stronger than them in World War IV, when they came back at the end of that one. And they obviously are going to be joining the anti-Unitarian thing. And now, the Treaty of World War IV and V, no, just the treaties of World War III and IV both prohibit the old empire from existing. However, the world is kind of, unable to really do much right now because they're all mostly busy fighting the Unitarians. But in the ones that aren't, like India, who is probably still the strongest country, well, actually, the old empire might be stronger now. But India, for example, is just funding the anti-Unitarians. They only did that recently because they still weren't sure if Unitaria was evil. But now they're definitely funding anti-Unitaria. So with the old empire reforming, we see that they're going to immediately take over this country, start liberating this gold team. A lot of these troops have been evacuated by now just to go help out in Indonesia and stuff. So it's not really, especially because a lot of these troops are, well, the people here are obviously very rebellious. The old empire faces not much resistance. So we see pretty similar things happen with Tanzania. Plus this country and this one. as now all these countries have just kind of like popped back up with their people, all fighting back the remaining African Unitarian forces here, as they now launch in one very big push into African Unitaria. They take Madagascar and now are looking towards its capital. Over here, for the anti-Unitarians, things aren't going as well. Finally, an Australia invasion has been landed, which pretty much immediately takes their capital. And from there, the actual Australian land army isn't really that strong. It's mostly just the navy, so they really don't face that much of an issue when going through the land. Pretty quickly, a lot of those former Australian countries that no longer exist start to pop up, such as Blue Australia, and I think there was a green one up here. I kind of forget. But yeah, because of that, we see very little resistance. And pretty quickly, just, goodbye. However, that is not going as well up here, where basically Japan and this country have been stalemated for a while, but these South China pulled out their troops here just to help those guys out. So because they are now doing that, two of them do work together to beat Japan, who I believe might be the first Unitarian country out of this war. Maybe. Other than Germany. But yeah. With that, I should probably update this a little. Goodbye. I don't need your icon. Or yours. Or yours. Or yours. Or yours. Or any of yous. Or yours, because you're that guy now. I guess not these ones either. Oh yeah, so this was the first Unitarian country to fall, actually. But over here in North America, Central America, was kind of expecting more of the world to help them out. That really did not happen, though. And, rest in peace. So yeah, all of North America is now controlled by the Unitarians. Over here in Europe, though, Rome and the Old Empire, who are collaborating now, as they would, are also being joined by their former allies. Well, they're not former allies, but, the team is back together. We have the Farmers Union, Poland, and even Norway all joining in. Even Finland does, because they're Scandinavian socialist, as well as Denmark. So with these guys all uniting now to stop the Unitarians, we see that it is kind of actually pretty evened out here. We have a lot of Canadian Unitarian troops are over here, as well as all of Ireland and Galicia. However, we do still have, Rome, some old Empyrean troops, Poland, Finland, Norway, Denmark, and obviously the rebellious people here. But regardless, not on that there, we see that Denmark now starts to push into Dutch team. Obviously, this is not just Denmark, it's all three of these guys combined. We also see one down here. In Poland, this is already Polish color. Pretty much it goes and occupies Germany with the help of Rome. Germany's just a lost cause as always. Speaking of Rome, they're going into the Dutch team former lands. That color is horrible, but it's gonna have to work. They also now move into this country, and even this one. And yeah, pretty quickly all three of these, well, 1, 2, 3, all three of these countries fall over to the Romans, as they also move into the Dutch team. Obviously, they're being supplied by the Farmers Union and Old Empire. Greece, right here, they do not like the Old Empire or Rome, but they also do not like the Unitarians. So they're just kind of very reluctantly staying neutral, because they really don't want to help out either side. Over here, though, in Europe, we see a very big liberation happen. I'm just going to make this green because it's hard to tell, because Poland is the same color as Unitarians. But anyway, all of Germany, and now the Dutch team's capital, is reclaimed. And so these troops together start working in. This looks like Denmark is absolutely insanely overpowered. It's not. It's just being supplied by these guys. We also see the rest of the Dutch team fall. As they now, let's make this less confusing, as these countries now start to move into France, taking its capital, and also all of Brittany. Again, just making it less confusing here. And soon enough, all of France falls, and now we see a stalemate as all of Western Europe has been reclaimed by the anti-Unitarians. Interestingly, over here in Ireland, a lot of these people, a lot of Irish citizens, are not happy being Unitarian. They kind of feel like their government made a mistake here. So a lot of them want to recreate Ireland, especially up here in Scotland. Ireland and Scotland united a while ago, but it wasn't like that long ago. So there's still some like Scottish people, and they're very anti-Unitarian. But this Irish rebellion also goes back into this capital. So pretty much all of Ireland now rebels against the Unitarians, and Ireland's back under, no longer Unitarianism. Down here, this country is terrified right now, and they have good reason to be, because guess who just joined the anti-Unitarians? So yeah, this poor thing, I don't know if they really even deserve this, but they're surrounded by all sides, and yeah, there's some mountains up here, so this one's pretty slow, but down in the south, they're just getting obliterated. It does not look like West Africa. But yeah, these guys have no more capital. I guess they're probably using it here after Ireland rebelled, but now that's gone too. So soon enough, everyone here is just, all the Unitarians are, removed and flee to Canada. With that, the Europeans can now start focusing in on sending their troops down here into Russia, into the old empire. We also see that Ukraine joins them. And now this does make it, that also means that these two countries are also fueling this massive African push. And I'm not going to bore you. It's a very hard war to fight, but it is this kind of a slow push towards defeating the African Unitarians. And that just leaves over here in Indonesia. They had been making a small invasion up here into South China, but now that is repelled, and in fact South China is now leading their own invasion to them. And soon enough, these guys are completely kicked out of mainland Asia, and now we see a very big naval invasion. So all of these guys start to come down here, and pretty quickly just make amphibious landings all around. Eventually we see the Red Australians also rebel, and yeah. So that just leaves North America. However, North America is extremely powerful, and this war has gone for a very long time, and has caused a lot of deaths. So we actually see that peace is going to be agreed upon by the Unitarians and the anti-Unitarians. So we are now going to take a look at that peace treaty in a second. Okay, so in this monstrous peace treaty, first thing you'll probably notice is that the Unitarians obviously just kind of won over here in North America. This is pretty much just where they are now. There's no more Unitarianism. It's all just over here in North America, where everything is Unitarian. Who knows how stable this country will be in the future? That's not for this video. If you want a part 2, then tell me. Over here, we can see they do also hold into Iceland. Over here, we see that obviously all these countries are restored, as well as Danzig. Denmark got some land, Germany got divided up, and Rome does manage to stay alive. However, they were required to spit back this country because that was kind of mean of them to take them over. France did get some land down here, but these guys got separated. Old Empire, I would assume that they're probably going to get jumped now. However, we're not going to do that in this video. Once again, if you want a part 2, then let me know. But in this video, we're not going to be covering that. So just in this, one day after the war, they still exist, but they probably will be in war soon enough. Central Asia got divided up. The green team's actually big now. It's still kind of small, but it's not a microstate. Pink team is also pretty chunky. This territory also got some land. What else? Oh yeah, I do not really remember what these exact countries were, so I just kind of made something up. I guess it kind of makes sense because they were Unitarians, so they left behind all their culture, so it really wouldn't be any way to divide them now. But other than bringing back like these three, nothing. Tanzania and the red team also got some land. Old Empire also annexed the guys down here in Yemen. Moving over, South China got some of Vietnam, but Vietnam got Sumatra. Indonesia got split into two. We have this new Pacific country being made. It's not Unitarian. Realistically, these islands would probably all be independent again, but I don't want to draw that. Red Australia, I mean, no one really likes them, so even though they technically won, they are still getting split up. We have the Blue Australians returning, and also this new Mint Australia in the north. And I believe that is it, actually. So yeah. Oh wait, Japan. These guys got some of the gold team, but the gold team got some of Japan. There's now a new Japan who's not Unitarian, but it's still unified, so they kind of aren't that bad off. They just lost Hokkaido and their northern lands. But yeah, so there could be a part 2 of this video, mostly because of you and you and you. So let me know if you want that. But for now, that is the end of this video. So, goodbye.